In the gilded quiet of a city that thrummed with restless ambition, the luxury condominium rose like a monument to the modern soul's paradox, at once a fortress of solitude and a gleaming emblem of triumph. Its marbled corridors and velvet-lined halls spoke of exclusivity, a sanctuary where whispers of wealth masked the echoes of loneliness. Yet, on this particular evening, the air within seemed to shift, as though the building itself held its breath. Keanu Reeves, a figure of understated grace, stepped into this realm of curated perfection. His presence, unassuming yet magnetic, seemed to ripple against the polished veneer of the space, like a single note disrupting a symphony. Dressed simply, his demeanor carried a quiet wisdom, a serenity that clashed with the rigid expectations of the world around him. He moved as though he belonged everywhere and nowhere, a wanderer in a place bound by its own rules. The first barrier rose not from walls but from men, security guards clad in tailored suits, their voices firm yet uncertain. "Sir, you'll need to stop," one of them intoned, the words heavy with the weight of protocol. Keanu paused, his gaze steady, his expression one of calm understanding. He spoke softly, his tone a balm against the tension. "Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his words carrying the kind of sincerity that could disarm even the most hardened skeptic. It was David, a young concierge with a sharp eye and a kinder heart, who broke the stalemate. "Keanu," he murmured, recognition blooming in his voice. The guards hesitated, their rigid postures faltering as realization dawned. The air shifted again, suspicion giving way to a tentative respect. Keanu offered a small, knowing smile, his humility dissolving the last remnants of doubt. As the moment passed, the building seemed to exhale, its silent grandeur embracing this unexpected visitor. Keanu walked on, guided by David, the tension of the encounter fading into the marble and velvet. Yet, something lingered, a sense of quiet transformation, as though the space itself had been touched by the presence of a man who carried peace like a lantern in the dark. The city pulsed with an electric rhythm, its skyline a tapestry of ambition and isolation. The luxury condominium, a towering monolith of glass and steel, loomed as both sanctuary and prison for those ensnared by wealth's gilded promise. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of polished marble and muted extravagance, a world where whispers carried the weight of secrets and every shadow concealed a story. The building's opulence masked its true nature, a labyrinth where human connection often faltered beneath the veneer of exclusivity. Keanu Reeves, a figure of quiet magnetism, entered this realm as an anomaly. His unassuming demeanor and understated elegance clashed with the ostentatious surroundings. A man of profound introspection, Keanu carried the weight of a life lived on the margins of fame and solitude. His motivations were enigmatic, driven not by material desire but by a quest for authenticity in a world that seemed to have abandoned it. His presence unsettled the rigid order of the condominium, a ripple in the otherwise still waters of its carefully curated inhabitants. David, a young concierge with a sharp eye and a heart burdened by unfulfilled aspirations, recognized Keanu immediately. Their connection was subtle yet profound. David, a dreamer trapped in a cycle of servitude, saw in Keanu a reflection of his own yearning for something greater. Their bond, though unspoken, became a bridge between two worlds, one of quiet wisdom and the other of restless ambition. David's initial hesitation gave way to a sense of purpose, his role as gatekeeper transforming into that of an ally. The condominium itself seemed to respond to their interaction, its sterile corridors and muted lighting taking on a newfound warmth. The guards, initially rigid and skeptical, softened under the weight of Keanu's disarming presence. Their authority, once a shield against vulnerability, dissolved into a shared understanding of humanity's fragility. In this microcosm of modern life, barriers, both physical and emotional, began to crumble, revealing the interconnectedness hidden beneath the surface. As the evening unfolded, the building's inhabitants, drawn by an intangible force, found themselves subtly altered. Keanu's quiet defiance of societal norms acted as a catalyst, awakening dormant desires for connection and meaning. The condominium, once a fortress of isolation, became a stage for transformation, its cold walls bearing witness to the quiet revolution sparked by a man who sought nothing but truth. In this fleeting moment, the city's relentless pulse seemed to slow, allowing its inhabitants to breathe, to feel, and to remember what it meant to truly live. Amid the tension of mistaken identities and unspoken truths, the air thickened as Keanu's calm presence unraveled the rigid choreography of suspicion. A moment of recognition sparked when David, an old acquaintance, emerged from the shadows, his voice cutting through the guarded atmosphere with quiet authority. The guards, their skepticism dissolving into reluctant deference, stepped aside, leaving Keanu to stride forward, not as an intruder, but as a bearer of unexpected serenity. The city's pulse thrummed faintly beneath the luxury condominium, a fortress of wealth and isolation. Keanu Reeves, an unassuming figure amidst opulence, sought entry not for indulgence but for a quiet purpose known only to him. His goal, to locate a reclusive artist rumored to reside within, a figure whose work held answers to questions Keanu had carried for years. Yet, the first obstacle emerged as uniformed guards, their skepticism rooted in the rigid hierarchy of status, barred his path. Polite yet firm, they saw only an outsider, a disruption to their meticulously curated sanctum. Keanu's calm demeanor, a practiced shield against confrontation, met resistance. His words, measured and sincere, seemed to dissolve against the guards' unwavering protocol. It was then that David, a tenant and acquaintance, appeared, a reluctant ally who vouched for Keanu's presence. This intervention, though brief, revealed the first crack in the condominium's veneer of exclusivity. David, a man torn between his own discontent with the building's rigid culture and his loyalty to its unspoken rules, hesitated before offering his assistance. Their dynamic hinted at a deeper connection, a shared history that neither fully acknowledged. As they ascended the marbled halls, the tension between Keanu's quiet resolve and David's guarded demeanor began to soften. David, initially wary of jeopardizing his standing, found himself drawn to Keanu's purpose. The artist, an enigmatic figure who had retreated from the world, was a source of fascination for David as well. This shared curiosity forged an uneasy alliance, one that hinted at the potential for mutual growth. Yet, the journey was far from over. The condominium itself seemed to conspire against them, its labyrinthine corridors and watchful eyes a constant reminder of the barriers, both physical and psychological, that lay ahead. Their conversation, though sparse, revealed layers of their respective struggles. Keanu, ever the seeker, spoke of the artist's work as a mirror to his own questions about identity and purpose. David, in turn, confessed his growing disillusionment with the life he had built within the condominium's gilded walls. These moments of vulnerability deepened their connection, setting the stage for the challenges to come. The artist's reclusive nature, coupled with the building's unyielding security, promised further complications. Yet, in their shared determination, a flicker of hope emerged, a belief that, together, they might navigate the obstacles ahead and uncover the truths they both sought. The evening's gilded calm shattered when the elevator doors slid open, revealing an uninvited figure cloaked in shadows. A man, disheveled and out of place, stumbled into the pristine lobby, clutching a torn briefcase. His eyes darted wildly, scanning the marble expanse like a hunted animal. The security team froze, their polished composure cracking under the weight of the unexpected. Keanu Reeves, who had just resolved the earlier misunderstanding, instinctively turned toward the commotion, his serene demeanor now tinged with quiet alertness. The man's voice broke the silence, trembling yet resolute. "I need to speak to someone, anyone. They're coming. You don't understand." His words, though fragmented, carried an urgency that sliced through the air. The guards moved to intercept, their hands hovering near concealed radios, but Keanu raised a calming hand, stepping forward. "Let him speak," he said, his voice steady yet commanding, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing. The man's gaze locked onto Keanu, recognition flickering in his eyes. You're the only one who'll listen," he stammered, thrusting the battered briefcase forward. Inside, proof. "They're watching everything. This place isn't what it seems." The room seemed to shrink as the weight of his words settled, the luxurious surroundings suddenly feeling suffocating. Keanu hesitated, the briefcase an unspoken challenge that demanded action, its implications threatening to unravel the sanctuary's carefully constructed facade. Before anyone could react, a loud crash echoed from outside, followed by the unmistakable wail of sirens. The man flinched, his panic escalating. "They're here!" Keanu, now holding the briefcase, exchanged a glance with David, whose earlier calm had been replaced by a grim determination. The guards scrambled to secure the exits, their movements frantic, but the sense of control had already slipped away. As the sirens grew louder, Keanu turned to David. "We need to get to the penthouse," he said, his voice low but firm. The briefcase felt heavier in his hands, its contents a mystery yet to be unveiled. The man, now cornered by the guards, shouted after them, "Don't trust anyone. Not even yourselves." His cryptic warning lingered as Keanu and David disappeared into the elevator, the doors closing on a scene of rising tension. The status quo had been irrevocably shattered, and the path ahead promised only deeper mysteries. The elevator chimed softly, its polished doors sliding open to reveal a figure whose presence seemed to absorb the very air of the corridor. A woman stepped out, her silhouette sharp against the muted glow of recessed lighting. Dressed in a tailored black suit, her movements were deliberate, her gaze piercing. This was Evelyn Carr, the building's property manager, a figure both revered and feared among the tenants. Her reputation for maintaining the condominium's pristine exclusivity was rivaled only by her ability to dismantle any disruption with surgical precision. Tonight, however, her usually composed demeanor bore a faint crack of curiosity. Evelyn's eyes flicked toward the lingering trio near the entrance, Keanu, the guards, and David, whose nervous energy betrayed his role as an unexpected mediator. She approached with measured steps, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to resolution. "What seems to be the issue here?" The guards straightened instinctively, their earlier confidence wilting under her scrutiny. David stammered an explanation, but Evelyn's focus had already shifted to Keanu, whose serene expression remained unshaken. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit corner of the lobby, a young woman named Mira observed the scene unfold. A freelance journalist with a penchant for uncovering the hidden stories of the city's elite, she had been waiting for a contact who had promised her an exclusive tip. Mira's instincts tingled as she recognized Keanu, her curiosity piqued by the unlikely confrontation. She discreetly pulled out her notebook, her mind racing with possibilities. What could have brought someone like him to this fortress of wealth and secrecy? And why the resistance? Unbeknownst to all, a shadowed figure lingered in the building's underground parking garage, their presence cloaked in the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint scent of gasoline. Clad in nondescript clothing, they moved with practiced stealth, their attention fixed on a small device in their hand. The screen displayed a blueprint of the condominium, lines and symbols glowing faintly. With a quick glance at the time, the figure pocketed the device and disappeared into the labyrinth of parked cars, their intent shrouded in mystery. Back upstairs, Evelyn's gaze softened slightly as Keanu spoke, his words imbued with a quiet wisdom that seemed to ripple through the tension. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," he said, his tone disarming. "I'm here to meet someone, a friend who lives here." Evelyn studied him for a moment longer before nodding, her instincts telling her that this was no ordinary visitor. "Very well," she said, motioning for the guards to step aside. "But I'll personally ensure your friend confirms your presence." As Keanu followed Evelyn deeper into the building, David lingered near the entrance, his thoughts a chaotic mix of relief and unease. Mira, sensing the moment was slipping away, decided to act. She approached David with a practiced air of nonchalance, her notebook tucked under her arm. "Interesting evening, isn't it?" David glanced at her, his brow furrowing slightly. "You could say that," he replied cautiously. Mira smiled, her journalist instinct sharpening. "Care to share what's going on?" David hesitated, torn between discretion and the urge to unburden himself. In the background, the building's pulse continued unabated, elevators gliding, whispers echoing, and unseen currents weaving a tapestry of secrets. Yet, beneath the surface, the first threads of a deeper narrative began to unravel, pulling together lives that had, until now, existed in parallel. The marbled corridors, once a sanctuary of muted opulence, now bore the quiet tremor of unease. Keanu's passage, though serene, rippled through the air like an unspoken challenge to the rigid order. David, the reluctant ally, lingered at his side, his presence a bridge between the actor's disarming humility and the fortress's unyielding protocols. Yet even as the guards relented, their gazes betrayed an unease, as if sensing an undercurrent they could not name. In the shadows of this gilded labyrinth, another figure stirred. Elena, a resident cloaked in the veneer of privilege, watched the scene unfold from the mezzanine above. Her life, a carefully curated tableau of wealth and influence, had grown increasingly entangled in the building's web of secrets. Keanu's arrival was an anomaly, a disruption that seemed to echo the fractures she had long ignored. Her curiosity, tempered by caution, drew her closer, her steps soundless against the plush carpet. Meanwhile, David's internal conflict deepened. His loyalty to the building's unspoken hierarchy clashed with a growing admiration for Keanu's quiet defiance. The actor's every word, every measured gesture, seemed to peel back the layers of artifice that David had come to accept as reality. Yet, the weight of his position bore down on him, a tether to a world he was no longer certain he believed in. As the trio moved deeper into the heart of the condominium, the air grew heavier with unspoken tension. The building itself seemed to react, its polished surfaces reflecting not just light but the simmering discontent of its inhabitants. Whispers of disapproval and intrigue followed them, a chorus of voices that hinted at the unseen forces at play. For within these walls, power was not merely displayed, it was wielded, often in ways that left no trace. Unbeknownst to them, a storm was brewing. The condominium, a bastion of exclusivity, had become a crucible for competing agendas. Elena's suspicions, David's wavering resolve, and Keanu's enigmatic presence were but threads in a tapestry of conflict that threatened to unravel. And as they approached the elevator, its mirrored doors reflecting their disparate expressions, it became clear that this was no ordinary evening. The stakes had shifted, the balance of power teetering on the edge of revelation. The elevator ascended in deliberate silence, its mirrored walls reflecting Keanu's composed yet contemplative demeanor. Each floor passed like a heartbeat, steady but laden with an undercurrent of anticipation. Beside him, David, the reluctant yet loyal ally, seemed torn between duty and the inexplicable pull of trust. The air between them carried unspoken questions, their weight pressing against the polished steel confines. Keanu's gaze, steady and unyielding, held a quiet resolve, as though he carried not just himself but a purpose larger than the gilded walls surrounding him. As the doors slid open, the penthouse level revealed itself, a realm of curated opulence and calculated perfection. Yet, beneath the veneer of luxury, there lingered a palpable tension, a dissonance that whispered of secrets too heavy for even the thickest walls to contain. Keanu stepped forward, his movements unhurried but deliberate, his presence a quiet defiance against the excess that sought to overwhelm. David hesitated, his earlier confidence faltering as he glanced toward the corridor ahead, where shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally, as if warning of what lay beyond. The turning point came as a figure emerged from the shadows, their silhouette sharp against the ambient glow of recessed lighting. It was Claire, the enigmatic architect of the condominium's exclusivity, her presence commanding yet shrouded in an air of vulnerability. Her eyes met Keanu's, and for a moment, time seemed to pause. The tension between them crackled like static, a silent recognition passing between two souls who had navigated vastly different worlds yet shared an unspoken understanding. Claire's voice, when it came, was both a challenge and an invitation. "You've come this far. What is it you seek?" Keanu's reply was measured, his words carrying the weight of a truth that could not be ignored. "Not what? Who?" The simplicity of his statement belied the complexity of the emotions it carried, a declaration that shifted the balance of the encounter. Claire's composure wavered, the carefully constructed mask slipping to reveal a flicker of doubt, perhaps even fear. David, caught between loyalty to his employer and the undeniable pull of Keanu's authenticity, found himself an unwilling participant in a confrontation that promised to unravel more than just the evening's tranquility. As the scene unfolded, the stakes became clear. This was not merely a clash of personalities or a breach of protocol, it was a reckoning, a moment where facades would crumble, and truths long buried would rise to the surface. Keanu, ever the catalyst, stood at the center, his presence a quiet storm that threatened to upend the fragile equilibrium of the world he had entered. And as the tension reached its peak, the stage was set for the inevitable confrontation, a collision of ideals, desires, and the unrelenting pursuit of authenticity in a world built on illusions. The elevator doors whispered open, revealing a space cocooned in muted golds and silvers, a sanctuary of modern opulence. Keanu stepped inside, his reflection multiplying infinitely in the mirrored walls. The tension from the earlier encounter lingered faintly, like the last note of a fading melody. David, now an unspoken ally, stood beside him, his posture slightly defensive, as though shielding Keanu from the unseen currents of judgment that swirled within the building's walls. The silence between them was not uncomfortable but deliberate, a shared understanding forged in the crucible of misjudgment. As the elevator ascended, its hum a steady rhythm against the backdrop of their thoughts, David broke the quiet. "You didn't have to come here," he said, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. Not after everything. Keanu turned to him, his expression unchanging, yet his eyes carried a weight that spoke volumes. Sometimes, he replied, his tone measured, places like this need a reminder of what they've forgotten. The words hung in the air, their meaning elusive yet undeniably profound, leaving David to ponder their depth. The doors opened to the penthouse floor, where the air seemed different, thicker, heavier, as if the very atmosphere bore the weight of unspoken truths. Waiting at the end of the corridor was a figure cloaked in shadow, their presence both commanding and enigmatic. It was Elise, the building's elusive owner, whose reputation for wielding influence with surgical precision preceded her. Her gaze locked onto Keanu, a flicker of surprise breaking through her otherwise impenetrable demeanor. "You've come," she said, her voice a blend of curiosity and guarded anticipation. Keanu stepped forward, his movements unhurried, his presence a quiet defiance against the grandeur that surrounded him. "I didn't come for the walls or the view," he said, his voice steady. "I came for the people trapped inside them." Elise's expression shifted, a subtle crack in her veneer revealing something deeper, perhaps guilt, perhaps recognition. David lingered behind, his role now uncertain, torn between loyalty to his employer and the undeniable pull of Keanu's quiet conviction. As the conversation unfolded, it became clear that Elise was not the monolith she appeared to be. Beneath her calculated exterior lay a woman grappling with the consequences of her choices, choices that had built this towering fortress but at a cost she had yet to fully reckon with. Keanu's words, simple yet piercing, began to unravel the tightly wound threads of her composure. "You've built a sanctuary," he said, "but sanctuaries can become prisons when they forget their purpose." David, observing the exchange, felt a shift within himself, a realization that the lines he had drawn between right and wrong, loyalty and betrayal, were not as clear-cut as he had believed. The tension in the room was palpable, a silent battle of wills that hinted at larger confrontations yet to come. And as the city's restless pulse continued its ceaseless rhythm outside, the stage was set for a reckoning that would challenge not just the walls of this edifice, but the foundations of those who dwelled within it. The marbled corridors whispered of restrained opulence, but tonight they bore witness to a quiet storm. Keanu, now past the initial barrier of suspicion, moved with a deliberate grace, his presence a subtle disruption to the condominium's curated stillness. David, the reluctant ally, walked beside him, his demeanor a mix of unease and determination. The air between them was thick with unspoken questions, the weight of shared history pressing against the present moment like a shadow that refused to dissipate. As they ascended in the mirrored elevator, the city's glow fractured into a kaleidoscope of light, reflecting on surfaces too pristine to touch. David's voice, low and hesitant, broke the silence. "You know they're watching, right? Every step you take here is a ripple in their controlled pond." Keanu's gaze remained steady, his calm unshaken. "Let them watch. Truth doesn't fear scrutiny." The words hung in the air, a quiet defiance that seemed to echo louder than the hum of the elevator. The final obstacle awaited on the penthouse floor, where the true gatekeepers resided. A council of influence, their power woven into the fabric of the city itself, had gathered. Their faces were masks of decorum, but their eyes betrayed a flicker of unease at Keanu's presence. He was an anomaly in their world, a reminder of something they had long buried beneath layers of wealth and pretense. The tension was palpable, a silent battle of wills unfolding in the room's gilded expanse. Keanu's voice, calm yet resolute, cut through the charged atmosphere. "I'm not here to disrupt your world. I'm here because it's time to reconcile what's been lost." His words were met with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue, the council members exchanging glances that spoke of both fear and curiosity. David stood at the periphery, his loyalty torn but his faith in Keanu unwavering. As the conversation deepened, the threads of the narrative began to converge. Secrets long buried started to surface, each revelation a piece of a puzzle that had been obscured by time and ambition. The stakes grew heavier with each passing moment, the weight of truth threatening to collapse the fragile facade of the world these individuals had built. Yet, amidst the tension, there was a glimmer of hope, a chance for redemption, for a new beginning. In this crucible of confrontation, Keanu's presence became a catalyst for change. The barriers of status and solitude that had defined the condominium began to crumble, replaced by a tentative understanding that perhaps, just perhaps, there was more to life than the gilded cages they had created. And as the night wore on, the city's restless pulse seemed to sync with a new rhythm, a rhythm born of reconciliation, of humanity rediscovered. The confrontation dissolved as understanding replaced suspicion, the guards stepping back, their rigid postures softening into quiet acknowledgement. Keanu, embodying patience and grace, offered a faint smile, a bridge between misjudgment and reconciliation. David, the unexpected ally, led him forward, his presence a testament to trust earned through shared humanity. The tension dissipated, leaving only the faint hum of the city beyond the glass walls, a reminder of the world's ceaseless rhythm. Within the sanctuary of the condominium, Keanu's steps echoed with purpose. He moved not as an intruder but as a harbinger of connection, his humility disarming the grandeur surrounding him. The once imposing edifice now seemed less a fortress and more a canvas for the interplay of vulnerability and strength. Subplots intertwined, the guards, now reflective, questioned their own biases. David, emboldened, found clarity in his role as a bridge between worlds. In this moment, resolution unfolded, not in grand gestures but in the quiet triumph of understanding. Keanu's journey through the marbled halls became a metaphor for breaking barriers, for finding common ground amidst division. The condominium, once a symbol of isolation, transformed into a space where humanity could thrive, its opulence tempered by the simplicity of shared truths. As he reached his destination, Keanu turned, his gaze meeting those who had doubted him. "Let's choose to see each other," he said, his voice steady yet profound. The call to action lingered, an invitation to embrace empathy over judgment, connection over separation. And with that, he stepped forward, leaving behind not just a building but a lesson etched into its very foundation. In the wake of the evening's quiet upheaval, the condominium returned to its usual rhythm, but something imperceptible had shifted. Keanu's tranquil demeanor, unshaken by the earlier misunderstanding, left a lingering imprint on those who had witnessed it. The guards, once rigid in their adherence to protocol, began to question the weight of assumptions they carried. David, now acutely aware of his role as both mediator and participant, reflected on the delicate balance between duty and humanity. Keanu, having navigated the moment with grace, embodied a quiet lesson, the power of humility in dismantling barriers built on presumption. His departure was unceremonious, yet profound, a reminder that even in spaces cloaked in exclusivity, the essence of connection could pierce through. The marbled halls, once cold and impersonal, seemed to breathe with newfound warmth, as if the building itself had absorbed the quiet revolution. As the city pulsed beyond the gates, the incident became a shared memory, a subtle call to action for all who dwelled within those walls. It urged them to look beyond appearances, to seek understanding rather than judgment. The luxury of the condominium, once defined by its isolation, now bore the faintest hint of unity, a potential waiting to be realized. In the end, Keanu's journey through the fortress of affluence was not about the disruption of its order but the quiet reclamation of its humanity. The events of that evening, though fleeting, left a lasting impression, a testament to the transformative power of presence and the enduring possibility of change. And so, the story closed, not with finality, but with the promise of growth, a whispered invitation to embrace the unexpected and find meaning in the simplest of encounters.